I know what you are thinking, that I'm going to bore you today with the same old stuff about capitalism, communism, and socialism. No, I'm not going to do any of it. But before we go ahead, I want to tell you something that everything you have been hearing about these ideologies from scholars and philosophers is the stuff that has been written down in books. And that stuff is merely theoretical. It has got no relevance in the practicality that we live in. It is far from the reality that we experience every day. One more disclaimer, I do not hail from any ideology, though I've been a part of them, like I've been on both sides just for the sake of experimentation. And also, I wanted to learn more about these ideologies. It's not a good idea to identify yourself with just one ideology. Why is that so? Because it limits your mental growth. You should have an open mind to be able to conceive new ideas so that you can make this world a better place. If you have a narrow mind, you are not able to receive and discuss ideas, different ideas with different people, then you will not be contributing anything to the progress of mankind. That's why just do not ever associate yourself with one school of thought. It's always bad for your personal growth and hence for the growth of this world. Having said that, it's also important to understand how things around you work. How do they function? And in order to understand that, you have to make sure that you comprehend how different ideologies perceive the dynamics. Have you ever read about Karl Marx or Ayn Rand? In my perception, the way Karl Marx explains our system, nobody else can. I've read many books, I've heard many philosophers and scholars, but the way he did it, nobody else has done it ever. But that's my perception. You could find many other people who disagree with me, and that's okay, because that's the beauty of a public discourse, that different ideas come onto the table and people are able to examine them, evaluate them, and then come to their own conclusions. That's okay. But in my perception, Karl Marx explains the system in the most perfect way. There is no flaw in his explanation. So when I compare his thesis and when I look at the reality, I understand that he's correct, he's right. But Karl Marx comes from the left side. There's a person on the right side, and that person was Ayn Rand. Now, Karl Marx makes sense only because what Ayn Rand said was true. Now, whenever I tell this to my communist, socialist, libertarian, anarcho-capitalist friends, they do not find it very appealing. Why? Because according to them, the issue is this. If I agree with the left, I cannot agree with the right. If I agree with the right, I cannot agree with the left, as far as foundation of these two ideologies are concerned. And I say that only because the right is right, that's why left makes sense. In other words, Ayn Rand said to us that people inherently are individualistic. It means that an individual should focus on his gratification first, and that should be the ultimate aim of our existence, because every person is designed that way. That's called objectification, a very objective approach towards understanding of life. And I think she was right. In my perception, every human being is greedy without exception. Even if there are exceptions to this hypothesis, I would say that we cannot generalize those exceptions. So majority of people are greedy. And those who are not greedy, they have to be greedy because otherwise they are left out of the system and they are not able to survive. And according to Karl Marx, communism or socialism or left is antithesis of capitalism. So first, capitalism exists. That's the real state of existence, which was described to us by Ayn Rand. And that's why we need communism or socialism, according to Karl Marx, of course. So he says that because of this scenario, we need to have a scenario that is against this. So leaders and public politicians like Bernie Sanders and Jeremy Corbyn, and even professors from some of the best Ivy League universities on this earth who claim that they are socialist or socialist democrats, should try to understand one thing, that in addition to painting a picture of future, they should also acknowledge the current state of existence of every human being. Because if they do not acknowledge it, then painting the picture of future will not help them. We have to acknowledge that every person is a capitalist as far as his desires are concerned. But we need the left side to play a good role so that those unfettered displays or dynamics of greed could be curtailed. We have to make sure that greed doesn't play out in the real world without any restrictions, right? Because we look around and we see that capitalism, the way it works out in reality, is failing. And it is not able to take care of every individual on this earth. Now, many people, especially scholars hailing from the field of libertarianism, they tell me that no, the way capitalism is working right now is not real capitalism because it's crony capitalism. And I say, yes, they are correct. But a counter argument would be whatever those people did in Soviet Union in the name of communism was not real communism because they should have followed Karl Marx to the T. They did not. So in order to achieve their personal agenda, they hide behind the veil of communism or socialism, and they did brutal murder of humanity. And that's not correct. But that is what capitalism is doing right now. Instead of physical force, you have forces like economic forces or social forces that are oppressing people. So, last few words before I leave you with the material to think about. Every person, even a communist who claims that he stands with the ideology, is a capitalist, because if you go to that person and you ask that person if socialism or communism will come, then out of your 10 cars, 9 cars will be taken away. Out of your 8 houses, 7 houses will be taken away. Would you be okay in that case scenario? And the uncomfortable expression on their faces will give you the answer. You will not even have to wait for their words. So that's true that every person is a capitalist deep inside as far as his wants are concerned, because that's how we are biologically designed. The biochemical reactions in your body, the way they play out, whenever you get some things, material things, you feel happy, even if only for a shorter period, but you do that. So every person is designed that way. So Ayn Rand was 100% correct when she was talking about individualism. But at the same time, we know that if we allow that individualism to play out in reality without any fetters, is going to cause blunders, and it will not be good for humanity overall. So that's why communism, socialism as an antithesis to capitalism was thought about. It's not the natural state of existence. It's something that has to be imposed onto people. And I'm not going to go into how that should be imposed onto people, because the way it was experimented by Soviet Union has not been that good a thing in its totality. So we will leave that question to be discussed some other time. Thank you so much.